Yeah, so this is another block on the Glenwood unit. It's the last block of the unit. I was up there a while ago. The guys did real well to get out of there before they got snowed in. I think there's probably about 5 feet of snow on the ground there now. So yeah, we got out of there in good time. So this little block here, I just wanted to talk about it. It's kind of a good opportunity to talk about kind of the reality of harvest units as I'm experiencing them now. They've actually, in the time that I've been in the industry in the West, they've changed pretty significantly. And this little piece is pretty representative, I think. It's a small block. There was a road behind me up the hill. There's a buffer down the hill to the left, and you'll see some blue flagging for that. And then off to the right in the distance, there's pink flagging. That's the boundary running down the hill. So, these small blocks are really complicated, and for somebody maybe getting started running buncher, just thought I'd talk about some of the stuff that I have to deal with and on these small blocks, and so somebody maybe getting started will needs to keep these things in mind too. So the main thing about small blocks is that there's a lot of getting started and not much cutting. It's quite unproductive. And, part of that I think is driven by, regulation. And like I said, that blue flagging down below me there, that's a flag buffer. And this is in Washington State. They've got slightly different practice rules. So it's a dry creek in the middle of winter. But hey, water is very important for us all to protect, and I support that. But for example, in Oregon now, there's tremendous pressure to update the Forest Practices Act, and any update we can be sure is going to make it more difficult and costly and inefficient to log, and it's unfortunate that the fact that the benefit from increased regulation is not taken into account, because I think the changes will impact the cost of logging and subsequently the cost of or the economic incentive to maintain forest land without significantly improving the impacts on water, for example. But anyhow, enough of that. But so like on this little piece here, what I did, given the way the unit, was put together, I decided to cut my way down on the far boundary into this draw and tip the wood back up the hill. And I will go to great lengths to avoid cutting downhill towards something like a buffer, any type of creek, any type of obstacle where there's not a good way out. Because in my experience, gravity works, and if you have a problem, you're going to end up down the hill. But I hopped out, I took a little hike on this, looked at it, the soil seemed pretty good, and really it was the only way to log this efficiently. And in the buncher, as the first guy onto the hill, I've got the best chance of getting out if conditions are poor, because the soil is fresh or undisturbed when I get to it, and Whereas a shovel following me up, I've been on it once, and even though the trees aren't standing, there's a chance that the ground disturbance could mean the difference between the shovel getting up out of the spot or not. So what I did was you'll see, I worked my way down, and then started an angled face, as steep as I was comfortable with working across the hill, tipping the wood uphill, and you'll see I'm kind of tipping it slightly to the left as I look up the hill, with a thought that when the shovel logs it, he'll be working his way down from the top, so he can grab those tops and swing them up the hill by the top to his right, and then that'll put him in a better position to be gun towards swinging up towards the road and the landing. So, it's in these small units, a little communication between the shovel or the buncher and the shovel and the logging shovel and the processor become more important, just to make sure everybody's kind of on the same page. It just makes the operation, go smoothly, because it's not always evident, from the get-go. It's not like a big block where, you start at the back, and by the time you get worked out the front, they're perpendicular to the road. It's just, anybody can see how it's going to log out. So with that angled face I spoke about, and I've spoken about this before, but that is just such a good tool for working on a hill. It's easier climbing, and it moderates the angle that you're actually climbing, and minimizes your swing to dump, which increases productivity. I think it's a really good tool. I use it all the time, and I highly recommend it. But with that being said, again, I had this gravity thing in the back of my mind the whole time I was cutting this, and so you'll see I'm trimming my stumps and trail mixing the hill, and I do not want to break traction. I'm doing everything I can in a preventive way to make sure that I climb the hill and get it cut and get it done without any troubles. I work by myself almost all the time, and if I get stuck, it's a real pain in the neck. So yeah, there you have it, another little piece. Hope you find it interesting. It's just what I do, thoughts on what I do. And any comments or questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. It's always good to hear from people. Appreciate it. Yeah, as always, we appreciate your watching.